Hi, I'm Denise Burke, and today's topic is resiliency. I can't talk about resiliency, of course, without talking about a little bit of my story each time so that if somebody new is watching, they can kind of understand. I was diagnosed with cancer, synovial sarcoma, in June 2017, went through 4 rounds of chemo, and then a below-the-knee amputation in January 2018, and rehab. Got my first prosthetic in April 2018, and I've had some ups and downs, 2 falls from the time of my amputation, but today's a good day. So I am in a study at UCLA, which, by the way, UCLA and their staff is amazing. And the study is a targeted therapy that goes after the nodules that are throughout my lungs. So far, the first scan shows promise, and so the update is that the nodules are not growing, and a few of them look like some possible cell death. So not bad for the first scan on the study. It's showing promise. When I talk about resiliency, though, obviously, I've talked about in previous videos the resiliency and the growth I've gone through from the moment I was diagnosed with cancer. That no matter where you are in your growth cycle, emotionally, mentally, when you get hit hard with the crisis, it definitely tests all of your coping skills, no matter what. It just does, because you're pushed beyond where your limits were before. And at first, when I was first diagnosed, it really felt like I was laying on the ground in the fetal position at times in my mind, because that's how hard it felt like it was slammed. My whole world was just slammed. As time has gone on, though, I developed resiliency and the coping skills to thrive during a very difficult process, and that is resiliency. So everybody has that ability. It's just being able to go through the steps and do the work to get there. But everybody has that ability, but everybody starts at a different place as well when something like a crisis hits them. But with resiliency today, I want to talk about my kids, because I'm trying to teach them those same skills. We're in a world where a lot of times kids are coddled, and we talk about the helicopter parents, and so much is done for them, and it's assumed that they can't handle things, and parents fight their battles for them throughout high school even, and then they go into adulthood still emotionally children because they can't or don't feel like they can cope with things. And the message from parents sometimes is that you can't do things. You need me. And I did a little of that. I mean, we all, I had my strengths and I had some of my weaknesses, but I was trying to teach them resiliency based on the world we were in at that point, which was me and their father going through a divorce, having moved my kids cross country from Connecticut to California, starting new schools, making new friends. And I did always impart the message that we can't stay in one place our whole lives because we're fearful of change. We will have changes. I've pushed us through changes, but I know you will develop the skills to cope with it. And at first you won't feel like you can, and you will feel overwhelmed, but you will grow. And you will learn that change is possible for you, and that you build strengths in the process. And they did, all of them. And yeah, again, I also encouraged venting and expressing emotion along the way. And they didn't always have to like the process. Most people don't like change and scream through the process, but you go through it and you grow and you become more resilient. Me being diagnosed with cancer put me as a parent in a whole new category. And for whatever I was trying to teach them resiliency and coping skills and strength and raising the bar, and teaching them and raising the bar, not raising it so high, knowing like, hey, there's an ultimate, there's a bar, meaning you can do anything, but not imparting this la-la land message, you can do anything, and then not teaching them the skills to get there. And then, of course, seeing where their growth was at, and then always setting the bar just a little bit higher for where they are, knowing you'll get to the next step, and you'll get to the next step. So I was diagnosed with cancer, and as a parent, I became overwhelmed at first with, okay, this is a new category for me. Teaching my kids, that they can do their laundry and they can help around the house and they can handle stressors with friends or at school or talking with their teachers or the demands of juggling school and their social life and other things. Dealing with a mom that has cancer, and a very serious cancer, and was looking at possibly losing her leg, that was a whole different category for me. And first I had to learn how to cope with that reality and then help them through it as well. And we did. And it was the same type of thing where we knew ultimately the bar was set very high of what we'd have to get through. But then we dialed it back to just one step at a time in that journey to get there, and just knowing we will get to the next step. We will get to the next step. We cried along the way. We laughed. We vented. We brainstormed. And then it became things like my son collected the name tags that he would get every time we went to the hospital, and just kind of like a game. And other things that we did and that we've been able to do and grow in the process. But now I have to talk about death with my kids. And although there were moments that, it would be said, the way I prepared them, and, by the way, I'm not dying anytime soon, but the reality is we will all die. And this conversation has to happen for me sooner, given that I have cancer and that I just don't know how treatments are going to go. I don't want to impart a message to them that's unrealistic, meaning it may be realistic that I beat cancer, but if I say to them, I'm going to beat this no matter what, and I'm going to be here for 20, 30 years, and that doesn't happen, I feel like I'm doing them a disservice. So I say, I hope that I will do that, and I plan to be there at your weddings and your graduations and hold my grandbabies, and I plan all of that. But we also have to talk about death. And because I know when my children are emotional, I've taught them to feel and to vent and express their emotion. They will be very emotional if anything happens to her, when anything happens to me, which again, it will, because I will leave this life one day. And I don't want them to have to cope with making arrangements for my death regarding my wishes. I also just want to prepare them so that they can be prepared for me to live. And they can also be prepared in case something happens to me. As prepared as you can make anyone. And that's giving some tools. And the rest of the tools will be on their own. If I go in the next 5 years, they're on their own. The cemetery and all of that will be planned, but regarding the emotions, I can only just continue to teach them how to be resilient and how to cope with their feelings and how to build strengths and how to reach out for resources and supports. That's what I'm doing, and that's what you all can do as well. And so with death, I have, from the moment I was diagnosed, occasionally inserted a message of, well, if I'm lucky enough to live past a couple of years. And they'd always say, no, Mom, stop. Don't even talk like that. And that was okay. I wouldn't anymore. I would just say, okay, well, we're of course going to pray and hope. But I felt like it was necessary just to slowly start to build some resiliency with the discussion of loss and my eventual loss. And I now look at where we're at, and here we are, over a year and a half later from my initial diagnosis. My daughter and I went and took a look at a cemetery the other day, and then I went yesterday to get some more information and then spoke with them afterwards. And I was reflecting this morning how proud I am of the work I've done and they've done, because although they immediately, when they hear, Mom, you're planning your services, and but they laugh about it. Like, come on, Mom, you're going to be here a long time. And I'm like, yep, I know. And I certainly hope I will be. But would you guys prefer, when I'm cremated, that I have a plot and that it's in the land and you have a place, that you can go put flowers and all of those for Mother's Day, and, then we make, again, a joke like 20 years from now, or would you prefer me to have, you know, be cremated, and do you want the ashes, or do you want the ashes in the wall that they have there? And so anyway, we got into this discussion, and they were very clear, like, we don't want the ashes. We don't want them. We don't want them in a wall either. We want them in the ground. And I'm like, there we go. And they were just matter of fact about it. They were like, well, yeah, we'd rather have you in the ground so that we can, you know, visit you. And so the conversation happened, and we talked about a service that I would like. And I said, but it's ultimately for you and for, you know, everyone. And I just expressed to them that even in my death, I'd like to take care of them. And that is by having my services and everything and planned, so they can make a phone call, and that part they don't have to deal with. There are very few decisions to have to make afterwards. Yes, I would love to be here another 20 so years. I'd love to be here another 10 years. We'll start with 5. And it's like the goals that I set with them of building resiliency. You know, again, I always set the ladder like one rung above where they're at, and they rise to the occasion and learn the skills, and then they keep going. But I know, they know I've set the bar very high of what they're capable of. And I watched them, and in awe, actually, be able to cope with things that children their age don't. So I know that I'm on the right path. So not only from my journey, but also as a therapist, I can say that you take anybody, out of their comfort zone. Like, in our comfort zone, we don't learn anything. So if you don't have any change and nothing ever happens in your life, or you tune out any things that are too much for you to handle, and you just stay in your comfort zone, you're not in a learning zone. And when you then move into that uncomfortable, that overwhelming feeling, I call it like the yellow zone, comfort zone. The comfort zone looks like an earth tone to me, but it's like the couch, and you're watching Netflix, and you're just like, I'm tuning everything else out, and I'm not going anywhere. The growth zone's yellow, and it's uncomfortable, and it's like that yellow light, like, should I stop? Should I go? But you're learning skills. You're uncomfortable. It feels overwhelming. It's the time that you are the most impressionable with people's opinions, because you're not secure in where you're at. And I know even through my process of cancer, the moment I was diagnosed, I was shaken out of my comfort zone regarding health and death. And then I was in that yellow zone for quite a while. Everything was new to me. Getting a port put in, getting CT scans, PET scan, dealing with the doctors, medicines, chemotherapy, then the amputation, then learning to walk again. I was in that yellow zone for a long time. And it's interesting now, because you move out of that yellow zone into the green zone when those things that you didn't have those skills before, and you were in the growth zone, and some of those things have become strengths for me now, so that I can have these kinds of conversations and not even get overwhelmed myself, to be able to talk about my death kind of matter-of-factly, go down to the cemetery and discuss, you know, what would be best, not for me so much, for my kids and for people visiting the cemetery after I'm gone. I'll be floating around, checking everything out. So for me to be able to even have that conversation without being overwhelmed and crying hysterically just shows that I moved from comfort zone to the place of growth, and then to a strength, and that's resiliency. So what I can tell you from today's video, sorry to talk about a heavy topic like death, but that I'm super proud of my children, that at ages 13, 15, and 19, they've developed the skills that many grown adults have not. There's still growth in progress and working on many skills, like taking out the trash when I ask them to, but yet they can have a very healthy conversation about loss. And that's okay. They're teenagers. They don't always want to take out the trash or do the dishes, but they've actually, more often than not, risen to the occasion. So thank you for tuning in today. Just know, wherever you are in your life, whether you have been diagnosed with cancer, or you have another health crisis, or just something that's jolted your world, or you're in the comfort zone, just know that it's a great place to be in the yellow zone. Sometimes you're forced into the yellow zone, like we were, and other times you can push yourself into the yellow zone. I've pushed myself many times throughout my life into the yellow zone to learn new skills, and to gain strengths. And it was super uncomfortable. And I like that uncomfortable. I do. Because it always means I'm growing. But with this one, again, it was unsolicited, but life does that to us sometimes. And we wake up one day and our whole world is different. And I found myself deep in the yellow zone. And here I am with many greens and strengths to show for it. So thank you again for tuning in today, and hope you all have a great day.